more importantly, you're right here on Palmetto Mornings on WRHI FM 100.1, your home for news, talk, and sports. I'm Lucas McFadden. It's 8:41 on this Wednesday edition of Palmetto Mornings, 75 degrees.
And I'm Patti Mercer. You can also watch us on Comporium Channel 103 or join us live on Facebook. We are there Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. You know, Lucas, we've had a lot of conversations this week. We've seen a lot of headlines, and we've certainly discussed how confusing it can be with processing information and also keeping ourselves healthy and a feeling of well-being. Sometimes what we see is a little depressing, or it can provoke a feeling of anger or sadness just all over the place. So who better than to talk about some of the things we are seeing on a daily basis but Eric Rittmeyer, who is a former United States Marine and an expert in the fields of mental toughness and emotional intelligence. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, guys. Good morning to you. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, well, we appreciated your advice last time because we, of course, the topic of the day changes, the movement of the moment changes, but we are people, and the balance between logic and emotion goes on. So help us.
It does. It does, and it will continue for as long as there are humans walking the earth. And I'm a huge proponent for, I'd like to get to the core of the issues here. So when you go to the very core of everything we're dealing with, whether it be the shutdown, whether it be the death of George Floyd, whatever it is, when you go to the core of everything, it's all tied to an emotion. And the issue with humans is we're not good at controlling emotions. So when something happens to us, we're hardwired to feel first and think later. So our initial response to any interaction, to any situation, is going to be an emotion-based response. If we're aware of that emotion, we can control it. We can't eliminate it. That's a big misconception. People think you can turn off the emotion. You can't do that. What you can learn to do is acknowledge it, and it's how you respond to things that's most important. We receive no training on this. That's the biggest issue.
We grew up hearing things like count to 10 or let that feeling cool a little bit before speaking. Words are like a bell. You can't unring the bell. I mean, there are some golden rules that we were taught, but it seems that lately those have been forgotten.
They haven't. See, logic and emotion, they're inversely related, Patty. So as we become more emotional, we become less logical and vice versa. Our nation right now, I refer to it as being drunk in emotion. We've been drunk in emotion for a very long time prior to everything that happened here recently since the beginning of this year. We've been drunk in emotion for a long time. We live in this outrage culture. Everybody automatically assumes the worst intentions of people. We cannot handle an opposing point of view. We're hypersensitive to everything that someone says. The minute we disagree with someone, we default to these defense mechanisms of name-calling, of getting upset. We've lost the ability to listen. You guys were talking about this earlier on the show, about listening, which is very true. We listen just enough to formulate our response. We're not listening with the intent to understand. We're listening with the intent to reply. When we do that, we're not hearing what someone's saying. All someone wants is for us to hear their point of view. We don't have to agree with them. We just need to make them feel like they've been heard. We're not good at that.
Oh, that's so true.
Spot on.
They actually say the job of a good reporter or journalist is listening more than asking the questions, which is so true to that. But how do we navigate that? How do you sit there and listen to someone? Because it sounds great, and there are people that do it, but without making a face gesture, rolling their eyes, or 20 minutes later doing something great and then voicing and venting their opinions on social media, which is a whole nother, storm there. But how do you train yourself to do that? Because I assume in the Marines, you also had to have mental toughness. So what did you do, or what was your training like to help us train civilians?
The best advice I can give on that, Lucas, is to understand your trigger. And that's the key. We all have these triggers.
Good point.
So when somebody says something or does something that upsets us, if we're not aware that we're kicking into emotional overdrive, we're going to respond in an emotional state of mind, which means we're going to say and do things we probably regret. We've all done these before. We've all gotten upset after we've had a conversation with someone. We said something we regret. It all boils down to understanding triggers. When you go into situations, you have to know that if somebody says something that's going to upset you, what immediately follows that is going to be an emotion-based response. If you can envision yourself in those situations, if you can control the emotion, you're going to be much better off than somebody saying something and subliminally you responding to it and doing something that you fly off the handle. Our nation is incapable of controlling emotion right now.
Knowing your trigger, boy, that is a fantastic takeaway.
Because that's what happens.
That's
I mean,
so true.
sometimes you just have to, once you've listened, agree to disagree. I mean, I heard that between my mom and dad on certain topics. Okay, Joe, we're just going to agree to disagree. But, there are things that you learned as a Marine that translate very well to skills that we all can embrace and be more effective in listening.
Absolutely. And one of the main mottos with the Marine Corps, Patty, I think this is military in general, but in the Marine Corps, it's improvise, adapt, and overcome. And that's something that's always stuck with me. And when you have a veteran, this is the key with veterans. This is what makes them so incredible. Just 7.3% of our nation is made up of veterans. When you have a veteran, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting commitment, integrity, accountability, loyalty, service before self. Our nation has so much to learn from our veterans because, again, we've been put in these situations where, you know what, failure's not an option. If the person next to you, if you have a problem with them, if you don't like them, you deal with it. You don't get on your keyboard and start typing stuff and start saying things you wouldn't say face to face. You deal with it. At the end of the day, all that matters in the military, do you have my back at the end of the day? When bullets start flying, do you have my back? I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you're from. We're all green. We all wear the same logo on the front of our uniforms regardless of your branch. It's called the American flag. We're all standing for one thing. Our nation needs to get back to finding things that bring us together as opposed to searching for things that separate us. The media's done a very good job at ripping our cultural fabric of our country apart.
Well, we even though we're in the industry, we have echoed some of those same responses too, especially at the national level. More regional news, local news. We've done, we've continued to live up to our core principles of community first along those lines. But also, don't we live in a society that if you don't like the way someone thinks, you don't have to be around the person. If you don't like a TV show, you don't have to watch it. If you don't like something on social media or you don't like someone you're following, you don't have to follow the person. Like, don't we have the options too of removing that trigger away from, that also is being lost in this, right? Just because I don't like something or don't like this person, I just don't watch the show. I don't follow the person on social media, or I just don't listen. I just move on to my day.
Now the message is silence supports violence. What is that?
And we do have the ability, but the problem is we don't. As a nation, we don't want to do that because we like the outrage. We love the anger. We like the fact that somebody disagrees with us and we can beat them over the head for their conflicting beliefs. And again, we've lost the ability to accept an opposing point of view. I'm all about going to the core of the issues. Okay, if you want to go to the really, really, really core issue in our country, regardless of what it is, whatever it is, our core issue in our country, it's a lack of a family structure. If you want to talk about a problem with violence, with crime, you want to talk about that? Let's talk about the lack of fathers in the household. I do a lot about this whenever there's mass shootings, which is extremely unfortunate. When you talk about mass shootings or any of these major issues we're having, it goes back to lack of fathers in the household. We right now as a country, we've totally drugged through the mud the idea of getting married, then having kids. It's all about, I don't care, it doesn't matter, I'm going to reproduce, and then the dad's going to leave. That's what happens. 70% of the households in some of the cities that are suffering from the most crime and violence, Baltimore, where I live, Chicago, 70% of the households are lacking fathers. That's an insane number. So if you want to start looking at common threads as far as why things are happening, or let's talk about single-family households. In 1960, just 9% of households were single-family households. Compared to 2019, it almost tripled. It's 26%. So if you're looking for common threads, let's talk about that.
Well, I think it's important to, if we're going to make a blanket, we all need to find those common threads that we can weave together. And I believe that we can, but it is through knowledge, information, and preparation. All of those things that, of course, our military, you guys do that every day. Well, thank you so much, Eric Rittmeyer. Your book, The Emotional Marine, 68 Mental Toughness and Emotional Intelligence Secrets to Make Anyone Instantly Like You. Sounds like a good read for such a time as this.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Eric, for your service to our country. We certainly appreciate it. Have a great Wednesday.
You too, guys. Thanks for spreading the truth. Appreciate it.